OLED is as affordable as it has ever been in 2026. 2 years ago, a $300 OLED sounded unrealistic. Now it actually happens during deals. And thankfully, the AG276QZD2 is not the only budget choice anymore, even though it's still a great monitor. The AOC Q27G4ZD has been getting very cheap during promos, sometimes getting close to $300, which is kind of insane for a 240Hz QD OLED. If you want to check current prices at any point, all links are in the description. Here's the difference between them. The Q27G4ZD is basically a simplified version of the AG276QZD2. No speakers, a more basic stand, less ergonomic adjustments. Panel-wise, they're extremely similar. Both are 27-inch, 1440p, 240Hz QD OLED glossy panels. The AOC does get slightly less bright at 100%, but realistically, most people won't even notice that in daily use. If they're the same price, the AG276QZD2 is still the better buy. But the AOC usually undercuts it during sales, and that's where it becomes very hard to ignore. In general, if you see any of these around $380 or less, that's when you jump on it. You're not getting a better OLED for that kind of money. Now, another one worth keeping an eye on is the MSI Mag 272QPX24. This one feels a bit more refined. It's slightly more responsive and more color accurate out of the box compared to the other two. And sometimes, you can even find it below $400 as well. At that price, it's honestly ridiculous value. So really, if you grab any of these three at the right price, you're getting a proper 240Hz OLED experience in 2026 without paying flagship money. And that's something we couldn't really say not that long ago. The ASRock PG27QFT2A is honestly one of the biggest value monitors of 2026. Not because it's packed with features, but because of how much you're getting for the price. It's a 180Hz, 1440p IPS display, and for this price range, the panel quality is surprisingly solid. Black levels are better than you'd expect from a budget IPS, gray uniformity is decent, and IPS glow really isn't a major issue here. Now, of course, it's still IPS. You're not getting VA or mini LED level blacks in a dark room. But at around $150, this is about as good as it gets. And yes, it's not loaded with extras. No KVM switch, no USB-C, and it's not tuned for ultra-competitive players chasing the fastest response times possible. But that's not who this monitor is for. This is for someone who wants clean 1440p at high refresh rate without overspending. If your budget is around $150, this is a very easy recommendation. Now, if you can stretch closer to the $200 to $230 range, things get more interesting. The MSI G274QPF-QD used to dominate this tier at around $200, and it's still a good monitor. But right now, it's hard to justify over the Asus ROG Strix XG27 ACS. The Asus is simply the better buy at current prices. It's more color accurate, noticeably faster in response times compared to the ASRock, has more features like VRR and USB-C, and it's just more versatile overall, especially if you're using consoles as well. It's also usually about $50 cheaper than the MSI right now, so when you're getting more performance and more features for less money, there's really no reason to pick the MSI at the moment. If your budget is between $200 and $230, the XG27 ACS is the one to go with. Now, if what you really want is 240Hz at 1440p without spending OLED money, keep an eye on the LG 27GR83Q. Aside from the jump to 240Hz, it doesn't massively outperform the Asus in overall image quality, but when it drops below $290, it becomes a very competitive option for people who prioritize refresh rate. Above that price, I'd skip it. Below $290, it makes sense. So watch for sales. Links are in the description as always. For those who want more screen space instead of higher refresh rates, the Dell S3222DGM is still a great budget 32-inch option. It's a 1440p, 165Hz VA panel with solid contrast and surprisingly controlled black smearing for its class. Considering how much cheaper it is compared to most 32-inch competitors, it holds up very well. The 1800R curve won't be for everyone, but for the price, it's hard not to recommend if you want something bigger without jumping into ultra-wide territory. With that covered, let's quickly look at the best budget 1080p options before moving into 4K, HDR, and higher-end categories. Now, 1080p is a bit different in 2026. The reality is, 1440p has become so affordable that spending more than $150 on a 1080p monitor usually doesn't make much sense anymore. The only real reason to stay at 1080p is if you care mainly about competitive performance. And if that's you, the VG259QMR5A is one of the best options around $150. You're getting 310 Hz, ELMB support, and very fast response times. This is clearly built for speed first. It doesn't really try to be anything else. Colors are decent, but not amazing, and brightness is a bit mediocre if you're in a very bright room. In a normal, well-lit setup, though, it's perfectly fine. This is for players who just want the smoothest and most responsive experience possible without spending more. Now, if instead of pure speed you want better image quality while staying at 1080p, take a look at the MSI Mag 255XFV. This one focuses more on visuals. It has better calibration out of the box, a VA panel with much deeper blacks, and noticeably better contrast overall. Brightness is also stronger. The trade-off is refresh rate and motion clarity. It's 240 Hz instead of 310 Hz, and you'll see a bit more motion blur compared to the Asus. So it really comes down to what you value more: raw speed or better contrast and colors. As for IPS at 1080p, this is where I think it gets tricky. You could go with something like the MAG 255FE20 if you want to keep the price low, but honestly, if you're already close to $150, I'd seriously consider saving a bit more and jumping to 1440p with something like the PG27QFT2A. In my opinion, 1080p IPS at that price just doesn't hit the same anymore when 1440p is only about $40 away. Jumping up a bit in price, let's get into the best budget 4K options. Among the cheaper 4K monitors out there, the S2725QS is still the clear standout. For the price, it gives you a lot. You're getting a 120 Hz refresh rate, a solid ergonomic stand, built-in speakers, and very good color accuracy for this tier. Compared to most other budget 4Ks, it's just a more complete package. But the biggest reason this one stands out is price. You can often find it around $220, sometimes even lower during strong promos. For a 120 Hz 4K monitor, that's hard to beat. Now, it's not perfect. There is some motion blur across refresh rates, and since it's an IPS panel, black levels aren't amazing in a dark room. If you're sensitive to motion clarity, that might bother you. If that's the case, and you can stretch closer to $300 on sale, the M27UP is a serious upgrade. Think of it as a more premium version of the Dell. You get more features like dual mode, KVM, USB-C, and better overall build quality. It also runs at 160 Hz, and at that refresh rate, it feels much cleaner and more immersive in motion. Responsiveness is noticeably better as well. At around $300 on a good deal, I would personally save a bit more and go for this one over the Dell. It just feels like a more complete experience. Now, if instead of higher refresh rate you want more screen space, the 32-inch version of the S2725QS is easily the most affordable way to go bigger in 4K. Feature-wise, it's very similar to the 27-inch version, but this time, you're getting a VA panel. That means better contrast and deeper blacks, which some people will prefer for movies and darker games. I know VA isn't everyone's favorite, but finding a 120 Hz 32-inch 4K monitor around $300 is not easy. For the price, it makes a lot of sense. And if you don't really care about 120 Hz and would rather stick to an IPS panel at 32 inches, then the LG 32UR550K-B is the safer choice. Since we were just talking about 32-inch monitors, let's step it up and get into the best budget ultra-wide options in 2026. Right now, the best all-around affordable ultrawide is easily the Dell Alienware AW3425DWM. This is one of those monitors that doesn't really have a major weakness. It's not the absolute best in any single category, but it does everything well enough that it's very easy to recommend, especially for the price. You're getting 34 inches, 3440 by 1440 resolution, 180 Hz, and a 1500 R curve, which feels just right for this size. The VA panel is well calibrated out of the box, contrast is strong, and it really enhances immersion in story-driven games. Yes, it's VA, so you will notice some smearing in darker, fast-paced scenes. That's just part of the trade-off. But for most people, especially outside of competitive shooters, it's perfectly manageable. Price-wise, it usually sits around $340, and when it drops closer to $300 during sales, that's when it becomes a really strong buy. Personally, I'd wait for that. Now, if you need to spend less, the AOCCU34G4 is the budget alternative. You can tell it's cheaper in terms of materials and overall finish when you compare it side by side with the Dell. But feature-wise, it's actually not that far behind. It's also 34 inches, 3440 by 1440, 180 Hz, and uses a VA panel with similar contrast characteristics. Brightness is a bit lower, so I wouldn't recommend it for very bright rooms, but for a controlled setup it works fine. Smearing levels are about what you'd expect from this class. You're getting deep blacks and good immersion with the usual VA trade-offs. So it really comes down to this. If you want something that feels more premium and better calibrated, go with the Dell. If you just want the ultra-wide experience for less money, the AOC gets the job done. Let's say you want a proper HDR experience with deep blacks, but you're not ready to jump into OLED pricing. This is where Mini LED starts making a lot of sense. Even though it's still a bit hard to find, the Xiaomi G Pro 27i is, in my opinion, the best IPS Mini LED option right now. Once you enable local dimming, HDR actually looks impressive. Blacks get very deep, highlights pop properly, and the overall image just looks more dynamic. Colors also feel more vivid and lively, and since it's IPS, you don't get the typical VA smearing in fast-paced scenes. Outside of the Mini LED backlight though, this is basically a standard gaming monitor. 27 inches, 1440p, 180 Hz. The stand is V-shaped, which I'm personally not a huge fan of, but that's more of a desk space thing than a performance issue. Naturally, the main competitor here is the AOCQ27G3XMN, which uses a VA Mini LED panel instead. Compared to the AOC, the Xiaomi gives you a brighter image, more vibrant colors, and cleaner motion in darker scenes since there's no VA smearing. For PC gaming, especially fast-paced titles, that's a big advantage. However, the AOC has one major benefit. It can downscale 4K signals, which makes it a much better choice for console gaming. The Xiaomi cannot do that at all. So if you're planning to use a PS5 or Xbox, the AOC becomes the safer and smarter option. There's also the upgraded version, the AOC Q27G40XMN. It has more dimming zones and improved blooming control compared to the older model. The problem is availability. It's very hard to find right now, but if you do come across it at a good price, that's the one to grab. Here you'll see my top 7 in each category. If you still didn't find exactly what you were looking for, check out my full best monitors of 2026 list here, and how to make the monitor of your choice look even better here. Thanks a lot for watching. Leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.